Hey guys, if you have a lot of things to do on a day-to-day basis, and if you are really looking at handling those tasks in a more productive way, then you should definitely check out GTD. So GTD basically stands for Get Things Done. It's like a framework built by David Allen, and you can read the book on Amazon, and it's like super helpful. Like you will get like a lot of details on what's the framework all about, and how to take up step by step and all. So in this video, I'll run through what are the learnings that I have got from GTD, and I'm not going to claim that it's the purest form of GTD implementation. I have had some tweaks here and there to customize based on my needs. So we'll just go through GTD at a high level. And second, there is this tool called OmniFocus, which basically follows this GTD workflow. Think of it like a to-do application, but it follows GTD workflow like as is, right? And it's definitely more complex than some of the to-do applications, like let's say Microsoft To-Do, wherein you just add a to-do item and all, so you don't worry about a lot of details. But if you want to use GTD in true spirit, it's really helpful, and you need some specialized tool, and that's what OmniFocus is. And unfortunately, this app is only on Mac and iPhone, so for Windows you'll have to find like a similar alternatives. So now getting back to GTD. So the idea is that when you have lot of things to do on a day-to-day basis, our mind can function well if we have some sort of a prioritization of what is like a non-negotiable thing that you have to achieve in a day versus what are the things that are good to do. It's not like there's a hard deadline that you should finish by today, but it's good to read a book today. It's good to go and meet a person today versus you'll have to finish a project by today. That's a deadline. So now a lot of these things, GTD has some structure and some approach in how to take up those items to make you feel more stress-free, more productive, and you get to the like right thing on the right time, and you finish all of your tasks without any mental burden, right? So the first, before we get into the actual workflow of what GTD is about, let's run through some of the some background. So first thing, this approach broadly believes that your mind is built to generate new ideas, but not to remember them, right? So for remembering, you have to write it on a paper, or you have to put it on a tool, or you can use 10 other things. But creating an idea is what you should focus more on, not remembering. So what it means is like, what are the 20 things that you should do? You need not have to remember all of those 20 things. If there is a tool that can do it, then just put it onto a tool or put it onto a white paper. But creating that 20 ideas should be your main goal, right? The second thing, it's very opinionated, which means that there is only a certain way in which you have to do. You just can't just play around, and there's a reasoning behind why something is built that way. So this is a very opinionated framework. And here let's jump into an interesting point. Let's start maybe with the workflow. So over here there is this word called stuff. So what it basically is trying to say is, whenever you get any new thought which you think is worth capturing somewhere, just come and put it into one paper. Okay, let's call it as inbox for a moment. So think of inbox as a place where you capture everything which hits in your head. Don't worry about, let's say if you randomly got a thought like I want to read a book, don't worry about when will I read it or how will I read it, why should I read it. Don't worry about all of those details at all. Just come and put in the inbox, and don't even worry about whether the task is actionable or non-actionable. Let's say you just saw one of your friends buy a car, and let's say it's costing some let's say from $100,000, whatever. So now you are going to just make a note of it somewhere in inbox saying that my friend has bought a car, this is the cost of it. Just don't worry about what will you do with it. If you feel that it's important, just put it there and forget about it. Don't even try to remember what was that number that my friend has bought a car for. Don't even try to remember it. Just get the dump out of your head, put it on the tool, and just forget it. So that's what this brain dump, and you'll have to keep doing it more and more often. So the more often you do it, the more relieved you are. And once the data comes into the so-called inbox, now actual workflow kicks in, right? So the first question that you ask is, look at each of the item and ask the question, is it actionable? As in, I want to meet this person on so and so date. Is actionable? There's an action that can happen for that particular item. Versus my friend has bought a car, not actionable. It's just there, like it's just for reference, right? You can't, what will you do with it? Fine, are you planning to buy a car? Then I want to buy a car becomes an actionable item, but your friend bought a car is not actionable, right? Now these sort of it, you ask this question, and once you think that it's not actionable, then you're going to have three options. Either you can just delete it, like you just put it but at some point in the before prior, but now you think it's not important anymore, just delete it from the list. Or second, you put it into one section called references or archives, right? And third, you can put it into a list called I will do it someday. So we call it as a someday list. What's a list? It's just a bunch of all items which hold inside a list, right? So now this is the first question. Look at all of your inbox items and ask the question, is it actionable? No. Delete it, put it in someday list, or put it in the references list. That's all, very simple. Next question, if it is actionable, then comes the question, can I do this in like 2 minutes? Let's say I have to call somebody and give an update that this is what it is. Will it take, if that is an item you added in inbox, can that be done in 2 minutes? Yes, like you can call him and in 2 minutes you can update him. Then this framework says, don't postpone it, do it right away. Don't say that I'm going to put a calendar invite for Friday afternoon to have that call, bloody 2-minute call. No, just do it right then. Don't defer it, right? If the work takes more than 2 minutes, then you ask a question, can I delegate it to somebody else? Let's say, why should I do it? Like one of my colleague can take it up, or one of my friends can take it up. Let's just say some personal item. So then just delegate it. But the point is, when you delegate, it's very important that you still keep track of it, which means you delegate it, you inform that person and say, hey, can you please do this for me? And you go back and put it into one more list called waiting for. Don't worry about what this list means. Like these are just little buckets. Inbox is a bucket. Like archives is a bucket. Someday is a bucket. Waiting for is a bucket. How do we create it? We'll go through that tool in OmniFocus, right? And once you put it into waiting for, you can keep checking upon it whether that person has finished the task or not. Now the point is, the task takes more than 2 minutes, and if you can delegate, great. But if you can't delegate, you are left with only one choice. You have to do it. It takes more than 2 minutes and you can't delegate it, so you have to do it. Now you have to ask this question, can this task be further broken down or not? If it is further broken down, then you need to create a small bucket and start putting what are that breakdown items. Versus if it's just a one-off item, as in like go to a movie, there's no breakdown. Let's say just go to a movie and you invest 2 hours, over. Versus I have to figure out I have to buy like the best shoes for winter, right? It looks like a one-time task, but it actually is a breakdown. Like think of it like, maybe I'll find out what are some of the good brands, and then I'll find out what's my budget and what's the usual range for the good winter kind of a shoes. And then like you can imagine like that it involves a certain break. I'm just making it up. If not this example, just relate with some other example. But if there is any work item which can be broken down, then create a new bucket, like how we have created archives and how we have created someday list. Just create a new bucket and put those breakdown items, the further breakdown items. Or if it's a one-off item, then put it into one common bucket called one-off and then put it. So now, I know we have spoken a lot. Let's just see all of this in action. Let's just understand some of the terminology. But before that, let's look at this. So basically, this is what I have learned after using it for a long time. I think when you use this method, there should be no distinction between whether you have some personal items, like let's say I have to renew my insurance policy, or I have to meet my friend XYZ, some on the personal level, and there's a project deadline, I have to go to a conference and XYZ. So this tool, if you really want to get the maximum juice out of it, don't have that distinction. Put everything there. Put everything that runs in your head. Anything that runs in your head should be in your inbox. Doesn't matter whether it is personal or work related. And put this tool with you. Like you don't have to necessarily share it with your boss or your friends and all. This is like your own playground of putting all of your things in your head and then just playing around, putting them in the right priority. What will be the benefit of doing all this? Once you start following this discipline, the tool will start giving you some intelligence, like what should be done today, what should be done tomorrow, what are the items which are non-negotiably you have to do it, versus what are the items which you want to do it but you can defer it, like you can do it next week, that's fine, but few things you can't, you have to do it today only. Now this sort of intelligence will just throw up. And the more you kind of interact with the tool, the more, or with the workflow in this case, the more you follow this workflow, the more clarity that you would get. Now let's jump into this tool called OmniFocus and see how this whole GTD workflow can be brought out in an action. But before that, we have to remember these 4 words. We have an inbox, you know what an inbox is, and there's a list or project, both are the same, basically like a bunch of tasks. And there is a mechanism called review. Another important thing is GTD says after you put those buckets, it's very important that you go back and review those buckets, let's say every week or let's say every alternate week sort of thing. the more you review, every time you look at the bucket, you look at all the tasks which are there in the bucket and ask the question, are these in a right shape, or do I have to further break them down, or should I have to give them some due dates, right? If everything is great, then just move to the next bucket. So kind of skim through everything. So this way what happens is, once an item gets added into the bucket list, it never misses your attention. It never gets rotten, let's put it that way. And it's not like for years you have never even seen that item, it's just lying around. It never happens, because the review will come back, and then you're forced to look at something and say like, oh, I've added it 1 year ago, what do I do about it? Is it still archive? Like I still don't have anything to do about it. Okay, let me put it back. Or, oh, this is now relevant, let me act on it. So that sort of intelligence is what this framework and this tool can enable, right? And then you have something called tags. These are just nice little hashtags, like context, like hashtag person, hashtag location. This gives little extra context. So now let's look at the tool. So this is what OmniFocus looks like. Like I said, it's only there on Mac and iPhone, but if you want any alternatives for Windows, I think you should try it out. I think Todoist is some application you can check out, but it may not have exact set of features, but you can find a lot of parallels. So the first thing is inbox. So the idea is, whenever you have time or whenever you have some thought in your head, the first thing is just come to inbox, add it. Let's say I have to meet my friend at office. Let's say this is what is the first item on inbox. The next thing, like let's say I randomly found I want to read a book of secrets. Let's say this is one of the book that I want to read, right? This is one of the tasks. And the other can be like I want to check, or let's say I can just put it as like check the status of the project X. Okay, so let's say you have added all of these items onto inbox. Now going back to our workflow, the first question that you should ask yourself is this task actionable? Or let's say we put one more item. Let's say we put there's a like Tata car, X costs some $100K. They just put it like some random number, right? So now the last item is definitely not actionable. So now let's go through that list of items in the workflow. The first question, is it actionable? No. Then what do I do about it? Do I want to delete it? No, I don't want to delete it, because when at some point if I really want to buy a car, it's very important. It's good that if I have this detail and which keeps popping up in front of me. So then what I'll do, I'll go to the projects. Basically projects means lists. Like I said, project is equal to list. Both are the same. I'll just create a project called archives. That's all. I'll create archives, and then I will say that I want to review these archives every 1 month. Okay, because these archives, I don't want it to be repeated in front of me again and again. What I'll do now, I'll put this guy into archives section. Perfect. Okay, well, let me just change. Okay, so right now this is inside yeah, it's in archives, and this view looks better. You can just change the view so it looks neat and clean. So now this is in archives. So the idea is, once I go back into projects and if I look archives, now I'll see this item and it's gone from the inbox. So think of it as the first thought comes into inbox. As soon as you add into inbox, you don't have to worry about what to do. Just put it there, and in your free time, sometime in the evening, just come and look at all the inbox items. When you look at it, then you're going to take a decision. It's not like you add the item and then you're going to take a decision right then. You add an item at a different time and you process them at a different time. What does processing mean? Taking from inbox and putting it into the right project. Once it is done, it means that be rest assured that it stays relevant there, right? So now archives is like non-actionable. So you just put it there. You review it after a month. Now the second thing, I want to check the status of project X. Let's ask this question, is it actionable? Yes. Can I do it in 2 minutes? I can technically, like I just go to the person and ask what's happening, and then he'll explain me. Let's say the process is 30-minute process. It's not a 2-minute process. Then what do? Can I delegate it? Can I tell my friend that let him check the status of the project instead of me? Let's say we add one more task, book flight tickets for vacation. Let's say this is one of the item. It is actionable. It doesn't take 2 minutes because you have to find the right flight, the cheapest one, the best timings, blah, blah, blah. And it can be delegated. So what I'll do, I'll come back here. I'll add one project called waiting for. Like I said, it's a list, new project. And I go back here. I'll just link it under waiting for. And another nice little detail that you can put it here. Maybe you can just put a name of your friend or your family member who would take it up. In this case, let's say I just added one name. Okay, so if you go back here, it shows up under the waiting for list. Now what's happening is the waiting for is relatively a little more important compared to archives. So let me set the review frequency to be every 2 days, which means every 2 days this whole list, how many ever items are there, it shows up in front of me and I look at them, like is it in the right shape or should I make any changes. Now let's go back to the next thing. I want to check the status of project X. I can't delegate it. I have to check the status because I have to understand what is happening in the project. So I can't delegate it. And in order to check the status, there's no breakdown. Like I just go look at it and I'm done. Like it's not that I'm having some series of steps to take up. Let's say there might be, like if I have to validate, then I have to validate on the performance side, let's say on the design side, experience side. Let's say if I am doing a digital product, I am checking the status on all of the fronts, then you might want to consider it as a multi step task. Otherwise you just go check the status and come back. Then what I'll do, I'll create one more bucket, one more list called one off. This is a fancy word which you will find it very common in the this ecosystem. One off means like there's no further breakdown, like one task. Then what I'll do, I'll come here and I'll put this under one off. Perfect. The next thing is I want to read book of secrets, actionable, not 2 minutes. I want to probably do it someday, or I want to I want to probably do it someday. It's definitely not like I open the book and I finish it, because it has got some breakdown, right? It has got lots of sub modules in it, right? So what I'll do probably is I'll create this thing into a project of its own. Okay, so what I can do is, let me call this as finish book of secrets. This itself becomes its own bucket, and then I'll add finish chapter 1 will become the first item, finish chapter 2 will become one item, finish chapter 3 will become one item. I can have the due date for the first item to be today, let's say, and I can have the due date for this to be tomorrow, and then this can be like what's the date today, like Friday, Saturday, day after tomorrow. Now this is what I was referring to. Like if you feel that item is just one off, just put it into one off. If you feel that item deserves to have its own breakdown, then put it into the breakdown. Now that's what it's all about. And then last item, I'll just put I want to meet my friend. It's actionable, yes. Is it taking 2 minutes? I don't think so. Can I delegate it? There's no point. Then I think, is it just a one-off item, or is it just I have to break it down further? It's just one-off, right? I'll just put it under one-off. So if I go back under one-off, I've got 2 items. I have to check the status of the project. If I want, I can give nice little context here that this meeting of the friend requires me to travel. So travel is one tag, and the name of the person I'm meeting is again, let's say Anudeep. I'm putting another tag. So that gives a nice little context. So if I quickly want to see how many tasks are related to this Anudeep, I can just call it. I can open Command O, it's like a shortcut, and then I can just search any project or any tag. I can just say waiting for, and that's all. So now what has happened, your brain has put all of the dump right here, and from the inbox it moved into the relevant projects or the relevant buckets. Now after putting it here, this is where the magic kind of comes in. It's in the forecast view. So forecast basically means, now that you have put up in the right buckets, you are building a visualization of what needs to be done today, what is due till yesterday, what should be done tomorrow, like a nice little calendar. As you can see, I have to read the first chapter of Book of Secrets today. I'm not finishing the entire book. I'm only taking the part of it today. Tomorrow I have to finish the second thing. Day after tomorrow I have to finish the third thing. Let's say I have got one of this, like I'm meeting the friend today. So let me put the due date as today, like 3 p.m. Then what happens, I go to forecast, I look at today. So today I do 2 things. I meet my friend and I finish my book. So that's what it is all about. So now, let's say there is a piece of work which doesn't have a due date as such. So what this tool and this workflow says is, never put a due date unless you really mean it. Because what happens is, if you have like due date for everything, and then when you open the list and you have like 20 items for due for today, and you only do 2 out of it, and then remaining 8 just goes into never ending due, and then you will lose the essence out of it, and at some point you'll stop taking the due date seriously. So what this tool says is, don't give due date unless it is super critical. If something you intend to do, then there's a different workflow. That's what, let's look at it. If you intend to do something, but not necessary that if you don't do, things will have consequences, then what you should do is create a tag called next, and then go back to any item. Let's say I want to meet my friend at office, but I don't know if it will happen today, and if I don't meet also, that's fine. Then what I'll, or let's say I'll put to a different one. Let's say I want to check the status of the project. Preferably I want to do it today, but even if I don't do it, that's fine. Like, but I intend to do it. So what I'll do is I'll give a tag called next. Now what happened? Nothing has happened. I just added a tag. But the real magic comes when you come here and then you say that, yeah, items tagged with next. So then what happens is, you see a clear demarcation that these two are due today, but the other one is not due, but you intend to do. So now what happens is, by default, you can go to the organized view, which gives you the little distinction. So now here what happens is, your job is finish off all the due for sure, non-negotiable. But if you take the next items, if you have bandwidth, take it. But even if you don't do it, there are no consequences. But if you don't finish these two, there are consequences. So that's what you kind of do. So that's what forecast means. And then you look at the entire thing, and you can put some of the recurring items as well. Let's say you add one recurring item. I want to meditate every day for 15 minutes, let's say, and you can put some duration as well. Where do I see? Not sure. There should be an option to add the duration for the task. Okay, let's worry about it later. Now what I'll do is, let's say this is something that I'll probably create one project and call it as recurring tasks. Okay, and I go back and I'll put it under the project of recurring tasks, and I'll select this and I'll repeat every day, or I can say repeat every week, or I can say repeat every Mondays. I can also say repeat every first Monday of the month. You can put like all sorts of criteria, but here I'll say repeat every Monday. Great. So now if I go back into the recurring task, let's say the due date is today. Now I go back into forecast. So it shows 3 things I have to do today. Let's say if I finish the meditation for today, what happens is automatically it will add tomorrow. And if I finish tomorrow, I'm just time traveling and I'm just showing you how the feature works. If you finish tomorrow, what's happening? Oh, there's a small catch. When you add the recurring task, it's important that you add 1 day from the assigned date, which means like whenever you finish from that date, proceed one day. By default, it says 1 day from today, 1 day from when it's completed. So that's a wrong parameter to set. So now if you put this way, what happens is I click today, it shows up tomorrow. I click here, it shows up on Saturday. I click there, it shows up on Sunday. It's a recurring task. It's a never-ending task. So the whole idea is, what happens is this view gives you like that's what I was telling in the earlier call. Put your personal as well as work items. Don't have the distinction, so that everything stays up at one place. So that's what forecast means. And for some reason, if you want to flag any item, you can just flag it. And what's the criteria to set the flag? That's completely up to you. You can have any unique criteria for what a flag means according to you. Maybe it needs special attention, or maybe it got over delayed, or maybe you want to discuss that with your specific friend of yours, whatever maybe. You can just filter by flag. And let me just unflag it. Yeah, then go back and let's look at what's review. Okay, so now we have got these lists 1 2 3 4 5. If you want to organize them, maybe you can just create I prefer doing it like work folder as well as, okay, it's outside work. Yeah, so now I'll say maybe finish the book of secrets, definitely personal, nothing to do with work related, and recurring task is also personal. And let's say this is something to do with work, or maybe I'll do one thing. I'll have 2 sets of one-off tasks. Maybe I'll have one-off for work and one-off for personal. So all these, there are no standards of how to do it. It's just up to you. Like the whole idea is, the framework says like you have to have one-off, or if the project is having more tasks, then make it its own project and start tracking it. Just start putting in that fashion, but you can slightly deviate from it and use according to your own filter. So I'll say meet my friend is a personal work, but check the status of the project is a professional thing, right? Similarly, you can have 2 waiting for lists. Okay, so you can have 1 waiting for under work and 1 waiting for under personal. And you can say book flight tickets for vacation is definitely waiting for, but you can say get the new project report from member X. Okay, so that can be waiting for. Now this you can again go back and say review every 2 days or review every 1 day. Now let's look at how the review feature actually works. So by default, because this review works only after when I come back tomorrow, but I'm just trying to change the dates to match it up. So I'll say this review should have been done on 8th, which is today. And the review for archives should also be done on 8th, which is again today. So what happens, you see here, you get these two lists in front of you. How many ever items are to be reviewed as of today, that list shows up here. You look at the items and you look at, okay, I have to get the new project report from member X. Okay, this bucket looks decent. Oh, let's take a bucket which has more items. Let's say we have this guy, wherein we are adding the review date to be yesterday. So when I open this review section, I'll have three buckets like archives, finish book of secrets. Yeah, it looks good. I don't have to make any changes. I'll just say mark as reviewed. Similarly, I'll say mark as reviewed. I'll say mark as reviewed. So you just look at the items and see if then any changes have to be made, and then just move on. Now my inbox looks empty, my review section looks empty, which means I can stay rest assured that nothing needs my attention. Then I go back to my forecast view, and then I look at the new items and I'll try to finish them at any cost by today. And any items which are tagged next, I intend to do, but even if I don't do it today, I'll find someday tomorrow. But there are cases where you have like a hard delivery to finish this, then you can, maybe it's on the next Tuesday. So you can still put a date and put a next, so that every day it shows up in your next section, so that you have a subtle little importance communicated, and you have a date and which shows like a hard delivery date. So I think that's it pretty much. It's super easy and very straightforward. If you try searching some more literature about how to use OmniFocus, I'm sure you'll find it. But I have personally found it super helpful. I have filled it like you can imagine, like everything, all the way from I have to pay my EMIs and I have to renew my policies and I have to reach out to my friends and all of those, and I have to network with certain people. I have to touch base with them like once in a month sort of thing. So even those items are there and with a recurring kind of a task. So it's been super helpful, and I'm sure I think you will find some value in it, and you can just, but feel free to change the flavor and just use it in however the way you want. And I hope this was helpful. And if you guys have any more questions, or you want me to go a little deep down, I know I've just scratched just the surface, but if you want to know more of the workflows, that how it has been helpful to me, I'm happy to make some other video at some point in the future. Yeah, thank you guys.